going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, and with round 18 kicking off later tonight, it is time for us to get our tips in ahead of another round of AFL action. But before we get there, we need to take the time to reflect on the previous round, round 17, which I thought handed us on a silver platter the perfect opportunity to get a perfect tipping round, 9 out of 9, because it was the top 9 teams versus the bottom 9 teams. And when you look at it and how the year has gone, you would assume the top 9 teams would have come through to give you a perfect 9 out of 9. And if you did think that, you were rudely mistaken, because that's exactly what I thought, and I ended up getting the 8 out of 9. As you can see right here, I have the one blemish, and that was Sydney deciding they were going to rock up and play some decent football, and they defeated Fremantle by the very slimmest of margins. It upset me quite a bit, but still 8 out of 9, nothing to scoff at. I'm very happy with that outcome. But with that being said, there were a handful of tipsters, coaches, however you want to look at it, this round in our competition that actually did manage the perfect tipping round. So we need to take time to congratulate each and every one of those people. As you can see on screen, there are 12 individuals that managed the perfect tipping round, one of which actually nailed the margin. I'm actually quite surprised. He's actually a very good friend of mine, and I don't know what possessed him to tip the Bulldogs by 49 points, but he did so. So congratulations must go to Sun Cripple, MRL from PA, Skyvo, Saintly 12, Nado, Timo IE, Princess Cahill, PMac82, Jazz Sky 13, Macca 0303, The Blooper Reel, and Beanos. Congratulations, each and every one of you. Perfect tipping round, especially now that we're back in circulation with full 9 games in action. Huge effort. That being said, we need to turn our attention now to total tips, and the lead by 3 tips total is still in the hands of Lana S. Skyvo, who I think pretty much for the entire duration of the 2025 season has led our competition. So congratulations once more for finishing on top overall. And as we run down our top 10, further congratulations goes to Jazz Sky 13, Beanos, Macca 0303, Nado, Gramercy Riff 78, MRL from PA, Frio 90, PMac 82, and Princess Cahill with Timo IE tied for that 10th place spot. I'm actually quite surprised. I worked up to 29, so I'm in the top 30 officially, and I'm on 95 tips total. 99 is where it's at. I'm only 4 tips away from breaking the top 20. I didn't think we'd be at this point, but ladies and gentlemen, we've got here somehow. So let's turn our attention to the tips for the round and see whether I can throw some spanners in the works and see if we can shift up the ladder, even if it's just marginally. As I said, round 18 kicks off later tonight, and it is Carlton hosting Brisbane at Marvel Stadium. They have dropped Blake Acres from the Carlton lineup, which blows my mind, because even though Carlton has been struggling, I feel Blake Acres has been one of those players that has performed for them rather consistently. So to see him just straight up omitted for Alex Chincotta, I don't know whether they've done that for a tagging role. I mean, you've got Dane Zorko, Lockie Neal, Hugh McCluggage, Josh Dunkley, so pick and choose which one you're going to try to target. For Brisbane, I believe Sam Day is out due to a personal reason, so big Oscar McInerney comes in. I feel Carlton are ripe for the picking here, and Brisbane are going to come down to Melbourne and do quite a severe number. They have a defensive half that is absolutely going to chop up this Carlton forward line. Carlton have struggled to generate score for months now, and coming up against a defence that has Harris Andrews, Dane Zorko, and other prime movers of the ball, and they love an intercept game, so they're going to absolutely shut down Carlton forward 50, and the rebound work of Brisbane is going to set up a lot of scores. This is going to be a Brisbane win by at least 30 points, I'm feeling here. Let's go 33. I think 33 is a sweet spot. So Brisbane to kick off our round, 33 points. I don't think Carlton get within a couple of goals of Brisbane at all. And if they did, I think they would shock the AFL fraternity by doing so. Friday night, thankfully, only 1 game. I don't know what possessed the AFL to do 2 games last week on Friday night, of which they overlapped. Absolutely ridiculous fixturing. But the Gold Coast are hosting Collingwood at People's First Stadium. And I know Gold Coast play a very good brand at People First, But Collingwood here, I don't see how they lose this game. I said it about Geelong a couple of weeks ago, and then Geelong went and lost. But Collingwood, I sincerely do not see where their next loss is going to come from. I think this is a game that Gold Coast has a realm of possibility of upsetting only because they have that home field advantage. But Collingwood have been playing such a superior brand, I don't see how they are going to manage to negate Collingwood as a whole. I think they'll have Matt Rowell potentially run with Nick Dacos for most of this game, but if you try to shut him down, you do so at the behest of letting the rest of Collingwood get off the chain. I think Collingwood win this one by at least 4 goals. Saturday afternoon, Marvel Stadium, Bulldogs Adelaide. This is a game that I feel has potential to be game of the round, and the ramifications for this game holds a lot, especially for myself and yourself at home, who have been having discussions about the Bulldogs and Adelaide as a whole, because I alluded to it in my recent round recap video, and if you haven't seen that, feel free to go check it out. I said Adelaide, with some of the wins that they have had over the last few weeks or months, where inaccuracy from their opponents has cost them the game. The inaccuracy of Brisbane in Adelaide, then we had only last week Melbourne very much could have and should have beaten Adelaide as well. Do we think Adelaide have been lucky in escaping some very narrow defeats and being on the ladder where they're situated right now? They could very well be out of the top 8 had their opponents been more accurate in those given games. The Bulldogs have been absolutely bullying teams underneath them, but are yet to really solidify themselves amongst the premiership contenders because they have failed to defeat anybody really of note, at least recently. So these two teams have a lot to play for here, because winning a game like this truly propels their season. And I think it's going to be the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. It's going to be a great game because both teams potent with moving the ball forward. Their midfields have been very cohesive. Their defensive lines have been great. I really, as a neutral, can't wait to watch this, but I think the Bulldogs win this one by about, let's go 17 points. We then move to NG Stadium with GWS hosting Geelong. Another great game, and a game where GWS need to win this to stay in touch with the top 8 and to prove some doubters wrong. When I said Geelong, I didn't know where their next loss was going to come from. I am pretty sure it was GWS that defeated them on their home deck. If GWS can go to GMHBA and defeat them down there, I have utmost confidence that they can do so at home. I am going against the grain, and I'm going to back GWS at NG Stadium to knock Geelong off for the second time this season. They're going to do so by a very slim margin, and just forward half of the ball, I think they have more forward threats. Jesse Hogan, Toby Green, they have Riccardi, if he's on. Stringer has been hitting the scoreboard of late. They've got Callum Brown. I think they have more avenues to goal than Geelong does, because Geelong sometimes rely on outside shots from a Bailey Smith or a Max Holmes and players like that getting on the scoreboard, whereas GWS, they have such a potent forward line that they can just get the job done with that forward 6. So GWS for me in a very tight game. We then move to the MCG Saturday night, Richmond hosting Essendon. Richmond obviously haven't announced their teams yet, but we all know Noah Bolter's not going to be playing this game. It's a night game. He's on curfew still, so he will be out of the team. Sam Lawler was injured last week. Hugo Ralph-Smith was injured last week, both of which will miss the remainder of the 2025 season. So there is room for at least 3 players to come in. I'm backing Tyler Young to come back in for Richmond for his first game of the year. He's been playing well in the VFL. He took a game-saving mark last week for Richmond's VFL team to secure a win over Geelong's VFL team. And I think, just structurally, he fits the bill. He'll come in, he'll play a great game. I'm really looking forward to the fact of whether or not Taj Houghton is announced for a debut this weekend. He has been tearing it up in the VFL. He's the X factor we need in our midfield, and I feel a debut here in front of a pretty decent MCG crowd, because this should get a decent turnout this game. I really love the idea of him debuting and having big impact in his first game. Essendon are still without some players. I don't know whether they're going to be getting players back from injury this week, but no Ben Mackay, no Mason Redman, no Kyle Langford, no Sam Draper. These are all players who would be licking their chops to have a great game against Richmond, and they usually do. So I am in two minds here about this wake and go. I'm going to go Richmond. I've just got a gut feeling if Richmond are going to win a game, I only perceive us being able to win maybe 2 games for the rest of the year. This is one of them, and the other one is beating West Coast in West Coast, which is going to be a huge ask. But if we can get a win here, especially on the back of the news last week of Sam Lawler and Hugo Ralsmith missing the rest of the year, and our backs are being against the wall and everything else, I really feel this win could go a long way to bringing a little bit of energy back into the team. And given the brand we played last week against Geelong and just the pressure we brought to the table, especially in the first half, if we can bring that pressure for 4 quarters, I think we go a long way to winning this game. So I'm locking in Richmond just for a point of difference for this round. Saturday rounds out at Optus Stadium with Fremantle hosting Hawthorn. Another great game of football. Another game that is going to separate the boys from the men. There are a few games this weekend where we see top 8 teams facing each other, actually. We have Collingwood Gold Coast. We have Western Bulldogs Adelaide. We have GWS Geelong. We have Fremantle Hawthorn. So these are all games that are really going to start setting the tone, especially given some of these teams are all tied on points, separated by percentage. These two teams, I think, are very much the same. If we have a look here, Fremantle is sitting in 9th on 40, Hawthorn are on 44, so Hawthorn are a win ahead. If Hawthorn win this game, they put themselves 2 games clear of some of the teams that are going to be underneath them, especially if the Gold Coast lose, especially if, let's say, a Bulldogs lose or a GWS lose. So there's big ramifications here for some of these teams. Being played in Fremantle, I think Fremantle have the edge. Hawthorn, I don't know. I really don't know how this game is going to fall, because last weekend we saw some things that really still present more questions than answers for both of these teams, I feel. Fremantle should have beaten Sydney, I really think that, but they were able to shut down the game of many players. They shut down Jordan Clark in defence, they shut down Caleb Sarong in the middle, and obviously without their main ball user off of half-back and their main midfielder kind of being able to influence the game, they struggled from the get-go. I don't think Hawthorn have the capability of locking down both. They can probably play a Finn McGuinness, for example, and run him on a Caleb Sarong, but they don't have a defensive player that I think could play a lockdown role. They could put someone like an Impey or an Amon, but I don't think they are really a negating, tagging kind of team. Be interesting to see who Hawthorn brings in as well, because Kel Shadir and Mitch Lewis both had pretty big games in the VFL last week too. So if they're both in a position to be brought into this game, that could cause headaches for Fremantle's defensive line, because it's going to make them more accountable. For the time being, I am going to lock in Fremantle at home. Once the teams are announced, I might switch. I just think being back at home after losing a very tight contest, they're going to bounce back rather big. Hawthorn has a lot to play for here. I think Fremantle has more to play for. They know if they lose this game, they lose touch of the top 8, and I think with that in sight, that's going to give them enough motivation to get the win at home. The first of 3 on Sunday sees Melbourne taking on North Melbourne at the MCG. I really wanted to tip North Melbourne in this game, but given the concussion symptoms that Davies-Uniacke suffered after last week's game, he won't be playing this game. I think that is going to be a player that they're going to severely miss out of that midfield core, so I'm going to give Melbourne the edge slightly. I really wanted to go North Melbourne here, because not only did North Melbourne beat Melbourne earlier this year, they did so very convincingly. So I feel there is a realm where North Melbourne back that up. I could still very well change my tip, but at this point in time, I think Davies-Uniacke is just too big of a hole to fill, and I think Melbourne win a very close game. Marvel Stadium, St Kilda Sydney. I feel Sydney are back. I mean, Sydney forward half of the ball now is going to struggle, because Joel Amati suffered an injury within the last minute of the game last week, which is now going to see him miss the rest of the year. Tom Papley did a hamstring, so we don't know how long he's going to miss. I still feel, though, around the ground, Sydney are well better placed. Being at Marvel, though, St Kilda have realm to upset, but who's going to be the scoring avenue for St Kilda? This is a game where Sydney's defensive line are going to be taking a lot of intercept marks, a lot of ball movement's going to come out of their back half. I feel Brodie Grundy is in god tier form right now with how well he's been playing. Isaac Heaney is in good touch. Errol Goulden coming back in has really lifted the game for Sydney. So I am going to go Sydney. I think it's going to be a closer game than people expect it to be. But I am expecting St Kilda to rock up to the challenge here. This is a very winnable game for St Kilda. I just think Sydney edge them out. Just. Final game of the round, Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide, West Coast. Port Adelaide, we don't need to talk much more about that, really. West Coast on the road against Port Adelaide, who have been finding some form back at home. Let's give them the win. I mean, they were beaten soundly last week, but I think they bounce back quite big here, especially on their home turf. So, we're going with Brisbane, Collingwood, Bulldogs, GWS, Richmond, Fremantle, Melbourne, Sydney, and Port Adelaide. Hoping the tips of GWS and Richmond, if they come through, stem the gap for me just a little bit. And with possibility of shifting to a North Melbourne, could be 3 tips that shift me. That being said, we have the gauntlet to view. It is the last thing for us to lock away before we wrap up this round. And who do we have available? We still have Carlton and Brisbane. We still have Essendon. We still have Hawthorn. We still have St Kilda. We still have Sydney. We still have West Coast. I think this is where we take Brisbane off the table, right? We take Brisbane off the table. I don't think Carlton are beating him here. Sydney could be one here that we take as well. Yeah, I think Brisbane. I think Brisbane's the safer bet. But with Brisbane being the safer bet, is that why we should go? I'm going to go Sydney. Let's go Sydney against St Kilda. I think Sydney win that game. If it comes back to bite me in the arse, so be it, because we're so close to the end here. But we've got to keep some teams like Brisbane alive for certain games, because the slim pickings we have left over here are quite slim. So, you know, Sydney being in the position they're in, we don't know when their next winnable game is going to be. This is probably one of the most winnable, so let's take them off the table. That is it for this video. Thank you for joining me as always. I do appreciate the love and support. If you do enjoy what I do here, I would appreciate it if you hit that like button down below. If you want to get on board the community we are building here, feel free to hit that subscribe button as well. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.